Good evening, wherever you may be out there in this big, beautiful world. This is Michael Cross here with another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions. And the one thing we want here is to have a very thought-provoking experience. And I think tonight's topic will be one in which it might sound controversial at first, but overall, I just want people to consider the points brought up. Now, before I get into it, I'd just like to encourage people, as I do all the time, to check my website out at michaelcross.net and also my YouTube station at, you just type in Michael Cross and it'll be the one that comes up and says Freedom from Conscience in part of the description, because that's the name of my book series. So check the website out, check the YouTube station out. Anyway, now, what I'd like to do tonight is kind of connect this to last week's show where I was interviewing Sandra L. Brown about psychopaths. And one of the topics that was brought up, it was empathy. And some of the context was that sometimes maybe something like hyper-empathy can be a disadvantage for people to have. And so that's what tonight's show is going to be about. The dangers of having too much empathy. So it's sort of the opposite of what a psychopath is, because a psychopath has very limited empathy. I like using that analogy that if you open up a computer and you're on Wi-Fi, if you have a very weak Wi-Fi connection, you have that little bar to the left comes up. And if you have a strong connection, you have all the bars light up. And that's kind of like what a psychopath is. They're kind of like down there on the first bar, because they can actually feel some empathy, but it is not to the same degree as, well, I'm just going to say regular people. But now what if you have this kind of empathy that's like off the charts? That can actually be a disadvantage. Now, I'm going to lead into this with something that you might find I'm being a little unfair to this person, but let's just throw it out here. The other day, I rode the train, and earlier, I had been bike riding. So I had my, I still use MP3 player. I don't like carrying a phone around, doing athletic stuff. But I had MP3 player in an athletic belt, and I was sitting in this one seat, and it was starting to get kind of crowded, so I decided to move because I was having to get a few things done, and I wouldn't have room if, looking at how many people were getting on the train. So I moved to a different seat. Well, it was early, I was tired, and I didn't notice that I had dropped my glass case, my eyeglass case, and my MP3 player in the athletic belt. So it wasn't until I was almost at my destination that I discovered it was missing when I had to put everything away. I didn't realize that I had left my athletic belt and MP3 player as well. So I was going to wait till everyone got off the train, and then I would go over and pick it up because I assumed it was probably on the floor or in between chairs. So I'm waiting. Almost everyone, the two people that were sitting in those two seats had left. They'd gotten up and they were almost off the train, and almost everyone's off the train. I was like, okay, finally I can go get my stuff. Well, at least the one thing that I knew of. And then this guy runs back, grabs the glass case and starts calling out, "Hey, is this yours? Is this yours? Is this yours?" And of course it was mine. So I jump up and say, "Oh, no, that's mine. Thanks." And I get it from him. And, of course, figure that, well, that's fine, and get off the train. The problem with that, was that I would have gone over to the seat and checked for the glasses case, and I would have noticed also the MP3 player, obviously. But I didn't realize it was gone until later in the day. And that was the only place it could have been lost. Now, you're probably thinking I should be grateful that this person was trying to do what was right. But sometimes when you do what's right, you get disastrous consequences. Now, this is a minor thing, easily replaceable. But if he had not decided to be the hero in that particular case, I would have been able to get I would have found both things, and everything would have been fine. Now, before you think I'm some sort of ungrateful person, I just want to go into why I believe that when someone jumps in and is very super empathetic, and that extends not just to personal decisions, but also government policy, that it can lead to disastrous results. Now, first, I don't have it right in front of me. Unfortunately, I left it at work. But I had a study that I'd copied off. And it was comparing the level of where a person would use violence and also how they scored on the psychopathic checklist. And the interesting part was, now you'd think, oh, yeah, well, Hannibal Lecter types, they're going to be super violent, and that sort of thing. In reality, it was opposite. The people that scored higher on psychopathic traits tended not to score so high on wishing to do intervention and do violence on other people. Now, I think it was mostly centered on, like, political, going to war, and stuff like that. And the conclusions that the people were throwing out was that maybe the super empathetic people, they see things going on around the world, and they so want to go correct all the misery, all the problems, and they'll spend whatever or do whatever it takes to rectify what they see as an injustice. Whereas maybe people that are higher on the psychopathic checklist, they might feel a compulsion to do these things if they have a very ethical, yes, psychopaths can have ethical codes and so forth. I don't want to, borrow really from Dexter there, because I question whether the Dexter character really represented a true psychopath. He seemed not to fit in many of the categories, but I don't want to go into that right now. But the thing is that the psychopath might be more likely to just say, what's the cost in this? What's the benefit in it? Will I achieve the objective? Will this benefit myself or someone close to me? And so that's kind of surprising, I think, for most people, that empathy can lead to problems. Now, let me give you an analogy here when it comes to politics, and I'm going to hit a whole bunch of other factors here. Let's say everyone knows a crazy cat lady, don't they? The kind of woman who she feels like, oh my gosh, there's a stray cat in the woods, or she even lets all the neighbors know. If there's a stray cat someone's dropped or whatever, I'll take care of it. Now, first cat, second cat, third cat, probably no problems. But a lot of times these cats have kittens then, and because she's neglected to sterilize them. Or maybe a cat's brought in that's already pregnant. Well, pretty soon it just keeps growing and growing, and she still feels this kind of heartache when she sees a stray cat. And so whether that's a projected maternalism that she never fulfilled or whatever, she keeps bringing them in. Because she's trying to be a good person. She really is. But you all know what happens over time. You've got so many cats. Are the cats really happy in the situation? No. Cats they're kind of a species that likes to be in groups, but they like to have their space. And they like to also demonstrate their dominance. So therefore, they get in fights, their health decreases, the sanitation in the house gets really bad, and ultimately, it's not good for the cats. It's not good for the lady who thought she had all the resources in the world to help these cats, when obviously she didn't. And I think this can extend to many areas when it comes to politics, when it comes to international and local and national politics. and a variety of issues. But the thing is that the stronger empathy will lead people. Maybe you hear like Bernie Sanders, and he gets up and talks about how unfair things are, unfair that some people can afford a better education than others, unfair that some people don't have a high-paying job whereas others do. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's a very, very empathetic individual. But the thing is, what are the solutions that many of these people offer? It could be that their solutions could cause more problems if you raise taxes on people, if you institute policies of fairness and so forth that could be taken to all kinds of extremes. And we all know where some of these can go. Anyway, I just read an article in which there's people coming out and saying that you should not give candy to kids who are dressed in culturally inappropriate, I think that's one of the terms, whatever, stereotypical outfits. And it was like if you dress up like a superhero, maybe you might make someone who has a disability feel bad. If you dress up in any kind of outfit that depicts a culture other than your own, then maybe someone could perceive you as mocking that culture. Come on. Yes, maybe these people really do think a lot, and they're thinking, maybe in this case, this could this and this could that. And, I think sometimes conservatives often will think that, well, maybe this is just because, they're kind of, not thinking right. But maybe it is. Maybe it's not so much of an agenda. Maybe they really do feel in their hearts that this is hurting someone. But what do? Should all kids dress up as potatoes? Well, then maybe the vegans will think that you're making fun of them. Maybe people from Idaho will feel like, oh, you're making fun of us, because often people think of Spuds and Idaho together. So maybe, just think, well, if we can't dress up as potatoes, we could dress up as strawberries. No. If you send your kids out dressed up as a strawberry, that could in some way make people think that, well, strawberries have an association. Strawberries have an association with fancy dinners, and maybe that will make poor people who can't afford strawberries when it's off season feel bad. So I don't know what to send your kids out for Halloween. Maybe we should just ban Halloween, since Halloween is ultimately kind of a fun way of looking at some very sacred Irish pagan traditions. Maybe the Irish could say, hey, you're making me feel bad, because you're making fun of a holiday that meant a lot to my ancestors. I don't see any Irish saying that, and I don't see very many other people, saying, don't dress up as a Viking because you may make people of Scandinavian descent feel bad. Okay? I don't see that. But these people that are always worried about how this could do this or that, they are, I think, extending this hyper-empathetic state to everyone. Now, I talked about the thing about the crazy cat lady and the maybe projected maternalism. You don't know how many people I've talked to. Once they're like in their 50s or 60s. They maybe had one kid. Maybe they didn't have any kids. Or maybe they stopped at 2. But, all these people I've talked to that have said, you know what, if I had it to do over again, if I could go back and influence myself back in the 1970s or the 1980s or even the 1990s to have had another kid or even to have had a large family. I certainly wish I could. Because you see, what happened for those of you, well, I think everyone's been hit with this. You know, you grow up in Western society where almost every freaking high school textbook on biology has a section that's, you know, oh my gosh, you know, population's going to ruin the world, you know, type stuff. And really empathetic people start thinking, well, I don't want all the animals to die. I don't want my kids to be in a crowded situation. And so many have limited their families because of this. Maybe they had 2 kids, but would have had 4. Maybe they had 1 kid, but wishes they had had 2 or 3. Maybe they had no kids, and then past, you know, especially in a women's case, they get past menopause, and it's like, oh man, maybe I made the wrong decision. And they wish they could have a kid. Well, the thing is, I've always thought, even when I was in high school and I was hearing all these lessons about, you know, this was so bad, and sometimes, you know, the teacher that might have 7 kids, you know, the other teacher's going, well, why does he have a right to have 7 kids and I only have 2? You know, that's, you know, I'm more responsible to the earth. Well, the thing is that I thought when I'd hear those kinds of comments and I was sitting through those kinds of biology lessons, isn't it weird then that the people who really care a lot, who are very empathetic, who want to really do good for humanity deep down in their hearts, are the ones not passing their genes on? I mean, that's kind of ironic, isn't it? And maybe the people are like, you know, I don't care. You know, they're not maybe motivated by, you know, anything but, no, I just want to have a family. But yet they will still pass their genes on more than the person who is like, oh, I want to save the world and I don't want all the bunnies to run out of room and stuff like that. Well, the thing is, yes, a lot of conservatives can go, ha ha, well, too bad, less of you. But still, I mean, that's terrible that people that have this really caring mentality might be dissuaded from passing that on. And even if it's not genetic, I happen to believe a lot of it is genetic, but even if it's not genetic, it's still the environment they would raise the kids in. And they would promote caring and compassion and empathy. So ultimately, it's a weeding out process, but you're weeding out the empathetic people in that process. Who knows? Maybe some of these scientists and researchers who say that more psychopathic traits are the inevitable result of evolution, that, you know, maybe they're right. I don't know. I'm not saying that everyone who has a larger family is psychopathic, but I will say that psychopaths tend to say whatever when it comes to any kind of social imposed norm on them and their behavior. So anyway, look at where we're at today. We have birth rate shortages. We have, you know, regardless of where you stand on this whole refugee and migrant issue, it is ironic that now there's government saying, well, we need these people to offset all the population loss we're going to experience when the old people are dying and they didn't have kids to replace themselves. These people that during the 60s were young and able to have kids, well, now they're getting to that age where, you know, a lot of them are, well, dying of old age and they didn't have enough kids to replace. Or maybe they had 1 kid and then their daughter had 1 kid. So you had a huge loss of population. Well, you know, now these governments, the same governments that were saying, oh, we got to curtail population growth and, you know, do good for humanity and have fewer kids. Then now they're saying, no, we need to replace the population that we didn't get. And that's ironic to me. I just had to point that irony out here. Anyway, going on from there. Now, some of these other issues I've been hearing about where, I mean, First of all, I don't believe in picking on people. I don't believe in bullying people. I don't think people should, I like that old adage that says, if you make a joke and there's 5 people in the room and 5 people are laughing, that's okay. If you make a joke where 4 people are laughing and one's in sorrow, that's not okay. But that brings me to this whole issue of people feeling that we should in some way get past what they call fat shaming. Now, again, I don't believe in picking on people of any age because they're fat. Okay? That's not good. Everyone's a human being, and, we wouldn't want to be treated badly. But I have to say this. When I was in high school, it was before the whole, we don't want to hurt people's feelings, and we can't have a lot of competition mentality took over physical education. And I will note that after that did take over, the weight of children has really increased. In fact, I saw somewhere that 36% of all 15 and under children in the United States are clinically obese. I mean, that is not healthy. That is not healthy. But now at the same time, we get this movement that has been saying, and now is saying that, well, no, you don't. We should not come out and tell people that it's unhealthy to be obese, and we should celebrate it. Well, I have acquaintances, friends who smoke cigarettes. I don't sit there and mock them, but I'm not going to say, I think we should stop all of our anti-smoking campaigns because that's wrong. And all of our taxes on cigarettes, aren't those discriminatory? You're discriminating against the people who smoke cigarettes. And could we call that smoker shame? Obviously, people are going, no, because smoking's bad for you. But hey, obesity's bad for you too. Okay? Obesity that leads to diabetes, and diabetes that leads to blindness, losing toes, fingers, arms, legs, even life. Okay? I mean, come on. This is a health issue. People should be encouraged to get into shape. And if we get to the point where we feel so empathetic towards it that we don't want to offend anyone by saying, hey, people need to exercise more. Now, I'm not saying everyone that's skinny is healthy. I'm not saying that everyone's a little chunky is not healthy. But those ones that are a little chunky and are healthy are the ones who also, they go out. Well, I know plenty of people. They regularly bike ride, they go running, but they're not going to because of their build or whatever. Maybe they have more muscle mass, maybe larger bones. Yes, there are people that have larger bones. Maybe they'll never get to that really skinny, I've been in a gulag for 5 years look that, on the other hand, society promotes in the fashion industry. Now, I would say it's actually having so much empathy that you're against some sort of so-called fat shaming. You're having the opposite effect. You're causing people much greater misery when they do fail to exercise because they become so accepting of where they're at that they don't have some goals to get their heart rate up, to get some exercise, to try to improve their health. Well, you're enabling them. You are an enabler. And you are going to be partially responsible if that person later loses a foot because of diabetes or their lifespan is greatly decreased. All right? So, yeah, you could, it may sound good. And these, I've seen videos that make it look like, and they play that kind of music you hear on daytime talk shows, that sweet, nice background that's designed to make you really feel empathetic and connected to the person and so forth. When they say, I've finally decided to stop exercising and punishing myself and accept myself and realize that I am a human being. You know what? Yes, you are a human being. But if I had a child that was out of shape, I would feel so guilty later if I outlived them because of it. If I, when I'm elderly, would go to their funeral, and they're 20 or 30 years younger than I am, because they died of something that was obesity related, I would feel bad about that. Okay? So, but again, hyper empathy. Now, the other thing that I have a problem with is trying to equalize school. And in that, I'm not going to go so much into public schools in America, but I will say that often you will have kids who have, they're very competitive. They want to do more. They are interested in things aside from the standard curriculum in that school. And it used to be, I would say, well, when I was in school, or even before that, maybe in the 50s and 60s for sure, in the 70s, that would be a rewarded sort of mindset, because that kid would get higher test scores, do more intense projects, and they would wind up probably getting into better schools, and, their life would, at least in theory, be better. Now, this mentality that seems to have come along in recent years that everyone has to be equal, well, is it really equal to say that the kids that need a little extra help and the kids that need a little extra help because they're so much different and more advanced, higher IQs or something? Is it fair just to say everyone should just follow the same path? But that seems to be the mentality, at least at the grade school level. There seems to be this kind of, maybe it's because I read recently that one of the jobs where you'll find the least amount of psychopaths is in grade school teachers. I thought that was fascinating. But then again, this hyper empathy might not be conducive towards traits like being highly competitive, not wanting to do group work, not wanting to fit in with everyone else. And so those kids, regardless of intelligence, that are different, wind up in a situation where they're ostracized. And maybe because of the ostracization, the fact that they feel bad and feel so different, this can later lead to depression in these kids and maybe even suicide. But yet we have a school system that seems to be bent on conformity nowadays. I would say that the institution of public schools in America today is partially responsible for all the problems that teenagers are feeling. This alienation, this sense of hopelessness and disconnection, and this sense of not really knowing how to accomplish a goal without having someone lead them by the hand, or having to call their mom on the cell phone complaining that a teacher has given a lower grade than he or she thinks they deserve, and that mom should come down and talk to the teacher. And, and a lot of times the administrators at that school are kind of like, oh, come on, just go ahead. Didn't she or he really mean this in that essay, or so forth? Or maybe, is there some way to show a little bit of compromise here? It's like that cartoon I've seen on Facebook. It said 1970s, it shows a parent-teacher meeting in which the parents, Johnny gets poor grades, so the parents are complaining at Johnny. And it says nowadays, and it shows Johnny gets bad grades and the parents are complaining to the teacher. See, I'm not considering the teacher as part of the institution any more than I consider someone who works as a postal service worker is part of the U.S. government. Okay? Government policy affects how they have to do their job. Government policy affects how a teacher has to do their job. It's not that a lot of times I see conservatives really jumping on teachers when they really should be singling out administrators and people that make the law, not the teachers themselves. But hey, we're so empathetic, we have to come up with different ways. You got to call the parents and tell them Johnny missed his homework today. Maybe it would be better if Johnny got a bad grade and suddenly realized that he needs to be responsible for his self and his actions and planning and so forth. But in America, that seems to be, oh my gosh, you're taking personal responsibility on something. I think we really need to promote more personal responsibility. I mean, we're so scared of someone kidnapping our kids that, instead of letting them walk down the street, I'm talking about, teenagers, instead of wanting them to walk down the street, maybe 7 or 8 blocks to their friend's house alone, we drive them 7 or 8 blocks. And then we wonder that when they get their driver's license, they're ready to go all overboard everywhere when they finally get the freedom. We can't be too empathetic. It's like when you try to help a chicken out of an egg, you help pull the egg off when it's hatching. The chicken will die because it didn't get enough exercise to get its lungs working properly and its musculature organized, so to speak. It's been curled up in a ball, in an egg, and now it's time for it to stretch out. And part of that is going to be enhanced by the hard, tedious, grueling task of pecking through that eggshell. Okay? And I think helping our children, just like Alfred Adler, the famous psychologist, said, helping our children too much is a form of child abuse, because the kid has to learn on their own. And, we have families nowadays, they're smaller, 1, 2 kids, they get more what they want. Sometimes we think that's good. Oh, we need to be so kind and generous. Maybe we just have 1 kid so we can give him or her everything. Is that going to help them? I don't think so. In China, they've called, all these kids from single child families, the spoiled brat generation. And the thing is, it's not saying that everyone who was raised as an only child is a spoiled brat. But the thing is that we tend sometimes to give in because we feel so guilty and empathetic. If Johnny says, oh, I don't want the ice cream you bought for the family outing. I want this one. And so you buy that one too. And so Johnny gets to eat a whole half gallon of ice cream. Well, I don't think that's doing Johnny any good. We don't want Johnny to work too hard doing chores because we feel bad when he's like, oh, Mom, I just really don't feel like it. I just feel so bad today. And so we do the chores for them. Is that doing that kid any good? Of course not. So the thing is, because of our highly empathetic culture, I think we take on more stuff as a government. We are taking over more and more of people's lives because we care for them so much. We care so much that maybe we need to take the guns away because someone could get hurt with those guns. You realize what would happen in the United States if you go and tries confiscating everyone's guns? There's going to be a lot of people hurt. The thing is that the people who want to take the guns, they're not doing it because, maybe the elite are, maybe the senators and congressmen that want to take the guns, they have an agenda. But the average person that goes out and marches against guns, they're not doing it because they want to take something from you. It's because they really care and they want to do good for people. But that doing good can actually do more harm in the long run, not to mention the fact it leaves people defenseless. And so ultimately, ultimately, I think we can look at empathy as being something that, I hope people do have empathy. But when we let it get out of hand, when we let it get to the point where it handicaps us and it's used to handicap others, then you're going to have problems that you totally unforesee. And then you wonder, well, why is this happening? Why are you at a parental level? Your kids rebel. Oh, why are they so ungrateful? Well, maybe because I was never ungrateful. Well, maybe your parents didn't do everything for you. And then you wonder, you give all these wonderful things through tax programs and stuff like that. And then those people that receive it, does it help them in the long run? Or should there be some sort of way of trying to get them integrated into the workforce? I think that's better, but then we feel bad. Oh my gosh, maybe you really do have like anxiety about going to work or something like that. Again, take a look at stories you see in which you're just sitting back going, oh my gosh, you are serious? Don't necessarily start thinking, oh, the people behind this must be psychopaths. Because it probably isn't. Most psychopaths, they're highly competitive and so forth, but they really, for the most part, don't want society telling them what to do. Think about the fact that probably the people are those people that have hyper empathy and, whether you call those bleeding heart liberals or whatever, that's another term for it. And so anyway, just wanted to leave you with that. You could disagree with me, leave comments here, whether, if you disagree. But I think that ultimately we need to have a balance between wanting to always do good for everyone and then looking at what the effects of doing good will cause as a result. Anyway, that's enough for this topic, and hope you'll stay tuned for the second hour here. And for those that you can't, then thank you for tuning in to Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions.